Ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:30, and I think we're going to commence with our exchange of ideas. Let me just, before we introduce the candidates and we begin the program, let me just give you an idea of what we're trying to do here, some of the ground rules that we're going to operate by. This event is sponsored by the Litchfield Opera House Committee for the purpose of expanding the public's knowledge about the candidates' views and philosophy regarding the nature of the job of sheriff. It's altogether fitting and proper that this event be held here at the Opera House because from its inception until the early 1960s, this structure was not only a main source of entertainment in the Litchfield area, it also was a political arena for local politics. And a lot of hot issues were debated here. I'm sure that we're going to probably come close to replicating that because we don't have air conditioning. Some of you people, I'm sure, came out tonight thinking, boys, it can be hot in here, but hey, tough it out. There are a lot of people in this world that would be glad to be in a position where they could listen to candidates campaign and actually vote on their preference. And that's a privilege that sometimes we understate. Before you on the stage are 6 candidates for the office of Meeker County Sheriff. They're seated in an order chosen by a random draw prior to the event. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the same question on a rotating basis. So the first question will go number 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The second question we start with 2. We go through 6 and back to 1. There will be a 2-minute response allowed to each candidate. And when you see a yellow flag come up in front, that indicates that they've spoken for an hour and a half. Well, let me back up with that. A minute and a half, and they have 30 seconds left. So you're at a sigh of relief. The babysitter can only be there at 11. When the red flag goes up, that means their 2 minutes have expired, and they should bring about closure as quickly as possible. When the opening begins, and there are actually 3 phases to this, the opening phase is going to be an introduction by each candidate and their credentials, and they have up to 2 minutes to do that. They should be brief. The second phase is going to be the exchange of ideas, and that's where I will be taking questions, starting with questions from the audience that the committee and I chose before we came up here. And then I'll go back to some of the questions that, and there were 16 of them, that we kind of gleaned out to ask. And there were many questions that were handed to us before this meeting began that were replications of what we already had. But I do want to start with the questions that actually came from the audience that we chose to ask. They will have 2 minutes to respond to those. At the end, there's going to be closure with a 3-minute oration by these candidates. They knew this was coming, so they could prepare for this as to why they should be sheriff. And this is kind of their campaign pitch, and that'll end the evening. And hopefully it'll be about 2.5 or 2 hours. We're trying to keep it at roughly 2 hours if we can. Paper and pencil will also be provided in the back in case you think of a question. Darlene Colton-Nicky's got those. And you can come up and
raise your hand.
Give those to hers, right? She's mobile. And then she'll pass that on to me. All questions tonight will be specific to the nature of the job of sheriff, and if not deemed appropriate, will not be asked. Personal attacks or criticism of individual candidates will not be allowed. Tonight's comments do not reflect the views of the Opera House Committee or this moderator. Let me advise you that this is a serious discussion. The lives and careers of these men are on the line, and the results of the election, win or lose, could greatly impact their futures. Therefore, a strict decorum will be observed. There will be no applause until the end of the evening, not during the candidate introduction, not at the end of an individual response to a question. Only at the end of the evening, and then that applause will be offered for all 6 candidates. Any violation of this code of ethics will result in the perpetrator being escorted out of the building before the discussion will continue. Also, no political signs are permitted while this discussion is taking place. This is an exchange of ideas. This is not an athletic contest to be cheered. The idea is that you will sit back, listen to what these men are saying to help you formulate who you're going to vote for. Bottled water is available. Is it over here? In the event, cups of water, okay, in case you developed a thirst. And for those of you who'd like to contribute to the restoration of this magnificent structure, which is slowly being brought back from the ashes, there will be plates available afterwards where you can make a contribution. The Upper House Committee hopes this event will result in voters becoming better informed about the candidates' views and consequently a more knowledgeable electorate when you vote in the primary on August 12th. That election will narrow the field from 6 down to 2, which will then enter the general election on the 4th of November, and I hope you all participate in that. My name is Greg Matthews, and I was asked by the Upper House Committee to be the moderator for this evening. Now, let's get it on. And I think we'll begin with Mr. Engler, who is candidate number 1. He has 2 minutes to talk about his qualifications and who he is.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joel Engler, like Greg said. My law enforcement credentials, I've been in law enforcement for 15 years, about 15 and a half now. I started with the city of Atwater part-time. Shortly after getting hired there, I got hired part-time for the Cosmos Police Department, Lake Lillian Police Department, and the Meeker County Sheriff's Office. I did that for about 2 years, and then I was picked up full-time in 2001 by the city of Litchfield. I worked for Litchfield for 6 years until 2007. And in 2007, I was approached by the Sheriff's Office to take the sergeant position, the patrol sergeant position for the county, and that's what I'm currently doing right now.
Wasn't too, but I'll be happy to use your extra if that's possible. I'm Gary Grunke. I've been a Litchfield police officer for 26 years. I came here with schooling from Alexandria Votech, the 2-year degree there, graduating with an associate's degree. I started out here as a patrol officer, and through my patrol work, I talked extensively to a lot of school students. I was the school resource officer without actually the title of resource officer. Through the talks in school, I also taught the Counteract program for 14 years, which is a sister program to what a lot of people are familiar with as DARE. After Chief Fank became chief here in Litchfield, he decided to change things up a little bit and made investigations an assignment position. I was the first patrol officer assigned to the investigation spot. I worked that for 4 years. Then rotated back to a patrol position. That's where I've been since 2010, back in the patrol spot. Other stuff that I've done here in Litchfield, I've been a member of the rescue squad for 25 years. Several of those years as a officer, and about 10 as the assistant chief. The rescue squad is a very active organization of 30 members, and a lot of stuff to do there. So public service is a big part of what I've done here, and hopefully can continue on as a good public servant to Litchfield, Meeker County, and all the citizens here.
Good evening. I'm John Thoma. I started my career, or actually I graduated from Alexandria School with an associate's degree in law enforcement. And in 1989, I started my career as a part-time officer for Yellow Medicine County and Grand Falls Police Department. In June of 1990, I was hired as chief of police in Sacred Heart, Minnesota. While in Sacred Heart, you gain a lot of experience, not only budgeting, dealing with staff, dealing with councils, taking calls, investigation. I also completed the Blend-In Leadership Program while in Sacred Heart. In January of 2002, I came to Meeker County. I started as a road deputy. Since then, I worked up the ranks to the position of captain in 2009, and that's my current position. I've also attended the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Senior Management and Leadership 126 credit course that I just completed.
How much is John? First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and showing a lot of interest in this. This is a big race. There is 6 of us sitting up here that have put ourselves out there for you guys. First of all, I just want to let you guys know, those that don't know me, I'm Ben Aho. I was also a sheriff's candidate 4 years ago. I began my law enforcement career in the city of Watkins. I was hired there full-time. That was my first job out of Ridgewater. I completed 10 weeks of skills program up at the Ridgewater up in Alexandria. When I started up in Watkins, I think that was the best place that a guy could, in my opinion, could start as a police officer, to start in a small town. It teaches you that you have to learn how to use your mouth. You have to be able to deal with the public, you have to be able to deal with the people, and not just throw everybody in jail. Sometimes that worked, but it's not the best option. But from there, I worked part-time with the sheriff's office. I spent about 5 months working full-time for the Watkins Police Department and part-time for the county at that time. September of 2002, I started with the sheriff's office full-time. I was there for almost 6 years, where I did 4 years of patrol work, and then 2 years I was assigned to the C-Section Drug Task Force, the Gang and Drug Task Force. At that time, I was one of the first officers outstate of the Metro to be assigned as a gang agent in this area. I went from there to 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago, to where I've been with the city of Litchfield at this time. With the city of Litchfield, I've done patrol and investigations for them. Currently still working as a patrol officer. Also have 17 years with the Watkins AMOT service, currently serving the last 2 years as the chief of that AMOT service.
First off, I too would like to thank everybody for coming. I think this is an important step in determining the sheriff of Meeker County. Special thank you to the Opera House Association for doing this too. My name is Brian Cruz. I'm a narcotics investigator with the Sheriff's Office here. I have been here for 20 years. This is where I started my career. I started originally as a part-time deputy. At that time, I also was part-time for Eden Valley and for Painesville, and then later became full-time with the Sheriff's Office here. Did that for several years. In 2000, I was assigned as a narcotics investigator to the C-Section Drug Task Force, and have been there ever since. I have a 2-year degree in business, and I was a manager of a convenience store for a short period of time. Then I changed career course and went back to school for law enforcement. And I have a 4-year degree from St. Paul State University. At the task force, I have been a lead investigator on hundreds of cases. As a lead investigator, I am basically the manager or the supervisor of my case. I supervise the agents that are assigned to my case, and I am responsible for all aspects of the case, including the financial part of it in securing funds, any overtime costs, any issues that come up in the case I deal with, and ultimately then I present the case to the courts and I defend that case when that goes through the court system. I have also been the union steward for half of my career with the Sheriff's Office, and in that capacity I've negotiated with the county, and I've also worked on some sensitive personnel-related issues. I have also been employed by Minskew as an instructor for EMS personnel on lab-related topics, and I have independently instructed a variety of audiences on a variety of law enforcement topics.
Good evening. My name is John Lane. I am the original. I grew up on a farm in northern Minnesota, roughly 250 miles north of here, near Goodrich. Most people don't know where Goodrich is, so I'll tell you it's near Thief River Falls. I completed my education there. Went to Goodrich Elementary, grade school. Then I went to the high school, subsequently went to college in Thief River Falls, and I took my skills training in Hibbing. I graduated in 1983 from Hibbing, started looking for work, and then subsequently was hired later in North Dakota. A little bit more about myself. I've been married for 35 years. My wife Mary works at the local Walmart here in town. I have 3 children. My oldest is Kelly. She's married to a career Navy individual, a man. His current ship right now is a strip mall in Colorado. He's going to be a Navy recruiter. My next son is Brent. He's a computer technician in Fargo. And my youngest is Jesse, who's a senior in Litchfield High School. I'm also one of the elders of Emmanuel Lutheran Church in town here. I mentioned earlier that I started working in North Dakota. I began my first job in a small department, sheriff to deputies in Meeker County, which was in Bowville, North Dakota, in May 8th of 1984. There was no retirement there. I subsequently left there with the Ward County. I was there for about 13 years actually. Ward County was a bigger department, had retirement and benefits. In 2001, I came to Meeker, been an investigator here. They were looking for an experienced investigator. At that point, I had 8 years. And I've been here for jack of all trades as an investigator.
Okay, thank you. We begin the second phase, which is the examination of ideas from the different candidates. And again, I'll be taking your questions from the audience first. And again, we're going to do this on a rotating basis. Every candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then we'll rotate the microphone so that each person starts at a different time. First question is, Sheriff Norland has an amazing grasp on the technology infrastructure within the Sheriff's Department. 9/11 system and the armor communication system, et cetera, et cetera. How do you plan on filling this gaping hole? You're asking about your technological expertise.
For those of you that don't know the armor system, that's a statewide radio system. Every law enforcement agency in the state does have the option to get on that. I have the pleasure of serving on the users committee. I've been on that committee with the armor system since before we went on the armor system. I know a lot of the technology stuff that is in the works right now that is going to be coming here. One of those things, you're going to be able to text 911. That's actually right here, right now. Many people don't use that. Another thing that's going to be coming with the advent of smartphones, you pull up to a car accident, a house fire, whatever it may be, you take a video of that, eventually that'll be streamed right to my squad car, so I know what's going on. And that even goes further than law enforcement. It goes to the rescue squad, the fire departments. Eventually everyone's going to have access to that, where that video is going to be right there. So, you know, you tell me it's a head-on crash. Well, there's hundreds of things that are going through my head. Okay, what's the injuries? What's this? What's that? If I can see a video or a picture, I can get the appropriate resources coming. You know, do we need a helicopter? Do we need to send them to a different hospital? Do we need multiple fire departments? There's a lot of technology that's coming into the sheriff's office right now. It is going to cost some money, so just be aware of that. Trying to think of more things that are coming that I'm aware of. Next Gen 911, for you guys that don't know what that is, that's already here. If you call 911 from your cell phone, it plots right where you're at. So, you know, say you're driving down a county road, you don't know exactly where you're at, call 911. Most of the time, I'm going to be able to figure out where you're at. I have been a great part of the technology that's coming into the county right now, and a good resource, and the armor system is only continuing to grow.
As Joel pointed out, technology is a big part of our growing law enforcement community. I, like a lot of you out there, probably have fat thumbs when you're texting something on your phone and need to learn a lot more about technology. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. There's a lot of people that are able to help someone out to learn these things. I'm someone that is willing to learn. There's people that we're able to get to implement upcoming technologies into the sheriff's office. Jeff Norland started, or was a patrol officer when I first started here, and he's come a long ways. A very tech-savvy individual. I don't know if I have that part of tech in me, but there are people that do, and getting those people on the sheriff's department or to work with the sheriff's department is key. Right now we have a very well-learned radio installer or technologically minded person, Randy Sealander, that handles a lot of our hardware parts of it and software.
Having a person like that is key. Granted, Randy's not going to be around forever, and finding a replacement for him will be tough. However, replacements, however tough to find, can be found. Randy, you're going to be a tough guy to replace. Thank you for your years of service. I hope you have a lot more in you. Just covering those holes, yes, may be tough, but we're going to do the best of our abilities to pick up where Sheriff Norman has left off with his technology knowledge.
Like what's been discussed, the next generation 911 system is coming. It's part of the texting in the pictures, as has already been discussed. My technology, I sit on the owner and operators board, which is part of the Armor radio system. And what we do is we make decisions, policies, procedures that then goes to the rack, which is the next level up. After the rack, it goes up to the state. My involvement with some of this has also been assisting our deputies, training our local fire department with not only the radio system, but also our mapping system. Our mapping system, when the computers came out, one other technology that we do have is we have our MDTs, our squad computers. When we put in that if you're going more than 10 miles an hour, your computer will not work. You cannot type in, which is obviously a huge safety factor, because with all the distracted driving that has been taking place lately, they say the top 10 things that people are doing while they're driving, 9 of them are considered distracted driving. So this new technology into the computers has been a big deal.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. Sheriff Norman has an amazing grasp on the technology infrastructure within the Sheriff's Department. How do you plan on filling this gaping hole?
I think that's question starts out correct. I think Sheriff Norman has a great grasp on the technology part of it. Also with that though, it's considered the Sheriff's Department. With Jeff Norman, there's a great team that is also back behind him that also shows through with that. I think a lot of that needs to be acknowledged as far as just not solely one person. I think as a department, it should go to credit to everybody that is behind that team. Officer Grunke did touch on just a bit of that as far as recognizing one of the individuals that's currently present here as a big, huge part of that. There's also a lot of people that are on the backsides of that as far as different programmers, different companies that are already here that have that capacity and that's what they do for a living. Some of this, if you drive through the parking lot, most days you'll see Marco vehicles, which are the technology people at St. Cloud. These are incredible people. They have that service here for that purpose, is that will just better the technology that is coming and that's here. So a big kudos to the system that's already here and the people that are behind that. I would just continue to support that as far as the technology part of it and accept that these guys are here for a reason and that this system is statewide, so it's governed by not only just Meeker County, but there's input from pretty much all of the state here. So.
I would agree. We do need to give credit to the rest of the department. And as any good supervisor will tell you, they can't do everything themselves. And we do need to rely on that, the other people in our department to continue that. Jeff is a big part of that, and that void will have to be filled, but I don't think that's a huge void that we can't overcome. At the task force, for whatever reason, I became the technology guy many years ago, so I worked hand in hand with their radio guy over there. Obviously, I'm not on the board, and I don't have input on it, but I have worked with them, and I do have an idea of what to expect, and I do have an idea of how this all operates. Not only that part of it, but law enforcement in general. There's a lot of technologies being used, and we need to stay on the forefront of that, and that's what I will do as sheriff, is that will be a priority, that we need to be on top of that and continue using that technology to help solve crime and prevent crime where we can in the county.
I believe first off, we need to hire the experts that know how to use the technology and be able to better expand on it. We need the computer techs, we need the IT people, we need the radio people like we talked about earlier. I'm not going to begin to say that I know everything, but I do know that you hire the correct people that can advance and continue to support what we have in place already and what's going to come in the future. You know, technology is always evolving. I can, 10 years ago, I couldn't imagine some of the things that we're doing right now. You know, who knows, maybe in 20 years we'll be able to look on a satellite and look at a crime as it takes place in live time, go back and look at it and see what happened. I mean, who knows? But anyway, that's my thoughts. You know, the main thing is we need to hire the correct people that do know what to do with this. And I support keeping the correct people working.
All right, Mr. Grunke, we'll start with the second question. This question is not actually part of the sheriff's job description, but I think it's a question that a lot of you are probably interested in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it a little bit, and you have 1 minute to respond to this, not 2. And the question is this: do you think that we are winning or losing the war on drugs in Meeker County, and why? And why not?
The war on drugs is a big war. Winning, losing, or gaining ground may be a better word. We're gaining ground from where what people thought was back when the war on drugs was first recognized in the early 80s. Through education, such as the program of Counteract that I taught, through DARE that John teaches, through all the DARE programs that all the other officers teach, and connecting with kids to learn about life experiences and not be faced with problems such as that, and to cope better, to be good citizens once they become adults. I think that's happening. It's not a lost cause by any means. A war on drugs is more or less trying to make better citizens of all of us. So that's how we're winning or gaining ground on the war on drugs.
The war on drugs is a tough question. Been asked it numerous times as I've been going door to door, talking to people. It's tough to say that I don't know if we're actually winning it. The problem is we take one off the street and we get 2 more popping up. They are constantly changing and revolving this stuff. I do believe that there is room to step up. Some of the drugs that are coming back. I had a canine partner for 8 years, and at that time heroin was not a big deal. They said, or not in our area. They said it was East Coast, West Coast. Now all of a sudden it's here. They're evolving, they're changing, and I think we need to continue to be progressive on this deal.
War on drugs. That's kind of a strong. Is it working? Oh, it's kind of a strong statement. As a war, I guess I don't see us as war, but something that we should probably work together with here. Like I mentioned in my introduction, is I spent 2 years along with Brian here next to me. Just designated myself as an officer that is always trying to enforce the laws. Currently, right now, are we gaining ground? I think there could be a lot of work in that area. Enforcement alone is not the answer to us getting a grasp on drugs. There needs to be a lot more interaction between us as a department, us as law enforcement, and a lot more interaction with you guys. We need to get over these fathoms that these people are out to get our neighbors, and if they're in our neighborhoods, we need to build that trust with one another, that we can work together and eliminate these problems. There's also the big need for not only us, probation, social services, the courts, everybody, I think needs to come together a little bit more zoned in on that kind of rehabilitation, and not just our part of it, which is bringing the courts and having them sit there.
Having been on the forefront of what people often refer to as the war on drugs, in my opinion, this country has never had a war on drugs. And by that I mean, we don't put money into the enforcement on drug laws like we do other things. Oftentimes the money that's allocated to drug enforcement is minimal compared to other things. But locally I can tell you this, we do make a difference, and we make a big difference in a lot of lives. Last year we had 150 felony arrests for the drug task force. Had we not been there, you can probably multiply that by 2 by the number of drug dealers would have been out there. So we do make a difference, but it's important to understand that there's a lot more we could do, not only on the enforcement side, but on the education side and on the treatment side. We need to educate our public and tell them what to look for. We need to tell them what their children are getting into and what to be aware of. We also need to work on treatment. Locally, we do have a drug court that's been started, and that should help the career drug user to help them get that off the drugs. It's a good program that will help give them incentives to stop versus actually just putting them in prison.
Drugs are continuously changing. Things have changed in my lifetime. There's drugs now that I never would have imagined 20 years ago. We do have the luxury of having an excellent task force. Brian's been part of that for years now. I've worked with this task force extensively. I've worked with other task forces in the past. They're a luxury to have something like that, a resource. They know what they're doing, they do a good job, and we'll continue to support the task force. We also need to go and educate, and we also need to just get strong values at home. A lot of problems are starting at home, and mom and dad can possibly nip some of the problems if they get one with their child.
I'll say that we do have a drug problem. I talk to a lot of people and they say Meeker County has this great big drug problem, but drugs are everywhere. Candido County has them, McLeod County has them. I think one of the big things is going to be education for both the deputies and for the citizens. When I first became a cop 15 years ago, you said drugs to me, I thought marijuana, cocaine, meth, heroin, something like that. Now the training I go to, I get synthetic marijuana thrown at me, I get oils that you can put in your e-cigarette that you can smoke. I think that the education part is going to be huge on that, and we also have to have you citizens educated, because if you see this happening, you need to call us on it, and first time, second time, something might not be done, but we can build up that case, and hopefully we can get that person off the street for you.
Okay, pass the mic to Mr. Thelma, please. The third question, I'm also going to shorten to 1 minute. It's, do you believe Meeker County needs a SWAT team? Why or why not?
Does Meeker County need a SWAT team? I would say yes. As sheriff, that has been something, actually when I became captain, that was something that I wanted to pursue. At that time it was not available, or the money wasn't available, but as sheriff, I feel really we need something like this. We're putting our deputies at risk every time we make an entrance into a search warrant, or if we have an armed subject. So my answer would be yes, I feel we do need one. It's a matter of finding the funding, and it would also be an officer safety issue.
My experience with the drug task force, Candido County has one, and they use it extensively over there when it comes to the war on drugs. Every time we do a search warrant, every time there's guns, or we believe that there to be guns, if we look at drugs inherently, that is dangerous to be around. A lot of the stuff that myself and Brian dealt with, there was always weapons involved with it. Officer safety issues, absolutely. Is there an issue for that? Absolutely. Do we have something in place? We already have, without calling it a SWAT team, we already have teams that we work with, whether it's on the Litchfield Police Department or the Meeker County Sheriff's Office, that we're assigned to different positions when it comes to making entry into a house when we execute a search warrant. I think creating this, I think it's just a matter of just giving these officers the correct training or a little bit better equipment to maybe take that round for us and not for one of you guys.
I think there's plenty of situations where a SWAT team could be used in Meeker County. I don't know that we have the call load or the number of those situations that would justify a team on its own. An idea that I've thought about and kicked around, and not only for Meeker County, but some of these other smaller counties, is attaching ourselves to another SWAT team or SWAT unit somewhere else. Currently in Stevens County, that's what they do. They have multiple counties that are on one team. It'd be cost effective for us. It would be available to us. We could use it when we needed it, but we didn't have to incur all of the costs of starting a team and maintaining a team.
And Ryan stole my idea. No, I don't. I also believe that we don't necessarily have enough calls that we would need a team by ourselves, but we could easily go and combine with some other agencies. We do have resources out there. Dan mentioned Candy, Ohio County. We have used them in the past. Thank God we don't have a lot of times where we do need a SWAT team. But I wouldn't mind going and possibly putting a member of our department in combining with other agencies.
Me being a first line supervisor, a lot of times I get the phone calls, when something's going on, you need to go out. I do agree that we do need a SWAT team. I don't think our agency is big enough to actually have one on its own, work together with the Litchfield Police Department, the surrounding counties, Eden Valley Police Department. If we could get the people that actually wanted to be on that team, it's something you can't force a person to do. You need that person that has that drive, that wants to be the first one in the house to do it. I totally agree with the SWAT team idea because, as most of you know, people are getting more and more dangerous. A lot of people have a lot of firepower that can outshoot me. That I've been trained for 15 years in shooting weapons and tactics and stuff, but there's people out there that are better trained than me and can outshoot me. So I don't think that we can support the whole team by ourselves, but I think if we're a team player with other counties, other city police departments, I think we could get a SWAT team going.
This is one of those areas that all six of us up here, I don't think, disagree widely on. To have a dedicated SWAT team, I don't think, like the others have said, we have that call load. However, we can be a collective effort, just like we have our task force that Ryan works on for the drugs, the C6 task force. We could have something similar as far as a SWAT team. In moments of such a need, a page can go out that these people respond. There's training that's available, I've been through it, that incorporates multi-jurisdictions to be on the same page as far as entry or high-risk situations. I think through proper training of good personnel that we already have would help fill that void if down or somewhere in the future there are funds to support such a SWAT team.
Okay, the next round begins with Mr. Aho. We're going to give a minute and a half to this one. I'm sorry, folks, I told you 2 minutes, but I'm trying to be somewhat subjective here, and I'm looking at the nature of questions and what I'm going to take to answer. I want to move this thing along because we do have a lot of questions. So forgive me if I misled you in the beginning, but I think this is the best course of action. Not only that, so you're starting to drift off, so I'm going to get you that time. All right, beginning with Mr. Aho. Do you believe that the county sheriff has authority within the county that supersedes that of the federal government? Explain. I think it's pretty cut and dry, but believe that the county sheriff has authority within the county that supersedes that of the federal government.
Welcome to Arizona. And here on all the fairgrounds, we'll have really large tents. If you look at that, though, as far as I guess I just I can't quote actually the way that the government's set up in the sense that the authority of the sheriff is that. The sheriff is ultimately the lead law enforcement officer in the county. That's his responsibility outside of the federal government, outside of the state government, outside of anything. It solely relies on one of these individuals sitting up here at this time, that he's going to take that oath that everything that comes through this county will be his responsibility when it comes to the safety of each and every one of you individuals out there, as well as my family, and these guys sitting up here. So with that being said, yes, I do believe that the sheriff has the authority that it's in the best interest of the people that voted him in, and not the federal government coming in to override what they're trying to do.
I think it's important to make a distinction when it comes to this. Federal officers or the federal government has their authority. As local officers, we don't have authority to necessarily enforce federal case law. To give you an example, I've been involved with drug cases that ended up at the federal level. And we have very limited authority at the local level. And it's true the other way around. The federal officers don't have any authority when it comes to our local ordinances, our local state laws and things like that. It goes in reverse when we're working that case, that they turn over local stuff to us. Now, having said that, the sheriff is the ultimate authority when it comes to our county. If a federal officer came in and demanded that I do something, I'm not obligated to do that. Now, if a court orders something, that's a different story, but more than 2 minutes I can explain here. It depends on what that court order is. And I think there needs to be a definite distinction between the two. The sheriff has authority, and nobody can come in and tell the sheriff what to do. And it ultimately falls on the sheriff as to whether or not he's going to conform or if he's going to stand up for the people of his own county.
The sheriff we do state law, local law. We do not go and do federal law. Brian mentioned, we don't go out for tax evasion. We don't go out, apparently in Arizona, they can't go out and enforce immigration. And that's our duty, is under state law. If it's a direct violation of state law, I'm not going to enforce anything that the feds are going to do. If they come and ask for something and it's realistic and it complies with state law, I will assist them. You know, I'm going to try to work with the federal government as well, but I'm not going to go and be the puppet either. If there is a court order, yes, order from the court, I have to follow the law. That's my sworn duty.
When federal laws are made, it's for the whole U.S. You know, what might work in a big city in California might not work here in Litchfield, Minnesota. You know, we're a small farming community. I think the sheriff needs to use some common sense when it comes to the federal laws. Yes, there's some federal laws that we have to uphold and that we have to do. Otherwise, the sheriff is going to get in trouble. But I think, like I said, he's going to have to use some common sense and do what's right for the citizens of Meeker County.
As candidate Cruz outlined, there are differences between federal and local laws and how they're enforced. Should the federal agents come here and need something, I do believe that there needs to be a collaborative effort as long as the rights of the county citizens are held up. That's of most regard. Of course, if the federal government tries to overstep their boundaries, push us around, or however you may want to put it, the sheriff needs to protect local laws as well, but still work with other law enforcement agencies that are here to enforce their rules as well.
Maybe repeat the question one more time, please.
Sir, SWAT team cover. See, I'm awake. Do you believe that the county sheriff has authority within the county that supersedes that of the federal government? Explain.
Again, like a lot of these gentlemen have said, federal and state laws are a lot different. The sheriff is the top law enforcement officer for the county, and I agree with working along with these different agencies that come in, but if the federal government is coming in and possibly going to try to do something against like the Constitution, no, then I would not assist them on that type of thing. But yes, the sheriff is the ultimate law enforcement authority.
All right, next question. And it has to do with gun control. Do you support constitutional carry, the concept that any law-abiding citizen can carry a firearm concealed without a permit? Do you support constitutional carry? 2 minutes on this.
I do, I believe it's already spelled out in the Constitution that we do have a right to keep and bear arms, and I don't think that we need to create any laws that would differ from that. In Minnesota, we do have a unique situation where you get a permit to carry. The only thing with the permit is we're just making sure that you have that authority to carry. I agree, you should be able to carry, our Constitution says that.
The Second Amendment does allow us to possess firearms. I do go along with what Brian just said, though, that I do like the idea of the permit, just so at least we can determine that it is a law-abiding person that is going to possess the firearm.
I took a little bit of heat on this one for my comment in the newspaper, so I'm glad this came up so I can explain my position a little bit better. I agree that all of us should be allowed to have firearms, possess firearms, but I do agree with the permitting process and the backgrounding process. You know, someone new comes into the area, we don't really know that person, he comes in and says, can I carry a gun? If I say yes, without doing a background check, what if he's a murderer in California or something like that? Like I said, I agree with everyone being able to have a firearm, handgun, shotgun, something like that, but the permitting process does need to be in place with the background checks.
Law-abiding citizen, that says a lot. If you have a gun and you want to carry it, by all means, please do so if you fit those qualifications. The Second Amendment will protect your rights there, and I fully endorse that Second Amendment.
It's not like skipping record, but yes, I also agree with the permit. The people that are going through the permit to carry classes, they are the law-abiding citizens. They have taken the class, they paid their fees, they've done practice shoots, they have everything needed, including their background checks. And I think that's an important part. So yes, I do agree with permits and Second Amendment.
I guess the end list, everybody said exactly, pretty much what I expected to say up here is, that is, like I said in the forum of the independent review, is that it's already spelled out in our Second Amendment. We've already got that right. Let's not try to make anything to decipher from that or move us away from that. But just to go off that, does it say that, make sure that they're qualified? Absolutely. That's for protection of myself, my children, and also you guys.
Okay, Mr. Wayne, we begin this round with you. Meeker County has allowed untrained investigators in health and human services to investigate and allege criminal offenses involving suspected welfare fraud and criminal neglect or abuse of vulnerable individuals. Do you think trained investigators on the sheriff's staff should supervise this important role, or continue the practice of using untrained investigators.
Well, trained investigators do supervise in a sense. I mean, well, I think you're talking about social services. They don't do the investigation by themselves. If we're looking at a vulnerable adult case, I'm working with them, or one of my coworkers is working with them. You know, they are there to assist. They do their portion of it. We're looking at the criminal portion of it. We work hand in hand with social services. They do different things than we do. They have different, I guess, end results that they're looking for. I'm looking to see if there's a crime that took place. I want to ensure that in the case of a vulnerable adult, that the person is safe, that they're not being taken advantage of, and we want to just bring it to a conclusion, a good conclusion for all people involved. But social services isn't necessarily running them up by themselves.
A lot of the caseload that the current sheriff's office investigators have does involve social services. You know, if some of these aren't being brought to our attention, which hopefully they all are, you know, if it's a crime against a person or a vulnerable adult, hopefully that all gets brought to us. But if the sheriff's office investigators aren't involved in it, it's something that needs to be fixed on the social services side. You know, do they need some training? This type of case needs to go to the sheriff's office, or I don't see the need for every single case to run through the sheriff's office, because social services deals with a lot of stuff, and if we have to put investigators on for that, we're probably going to have to double the investigators that we do have currently.
Like John Wayne said, law enforcement looks at the criminal aspect, if there's a crime been committed, if there's a safety issue for someone involved that's in need of services. We work closely with those social service agents assigned to various aspects of social needs, from abuse to financial to sheltering people. They have a lot of jobs to do as well. We have the criminal aspect to look at. Untrained, I'm not sure just where the untrained thoughts are coming there. I don't know the credentials of each and every social service agent. I believe that they take training through their schooling on how to handle social service issues, continuing ed, just like I have. To keep and obtain my license, continuing ed is a key. It's a requirement. So proper training is key, but to work on the criminal aspect with social services to protect all citizens of Meeker County is what's most needed here.
I agree with what these gentlemen have said also. Social services, we don't know all their credentials, but I do know that as a road deputy, we assist social services on numerous calls where the road deputy might actually be doing part of the investigation. A lot of the calls that come into our office from social services, our intakes, do get farmed back to social services because it does not meet the criminal nature, and therefore they are closed.
I think a lot of these questions that are coming forward is that as all of us sit up here to maintain our license, we have to maintain a certain amount of continuing education. I think throughout social services, probation, I think everybody else has to maintain that to keep up their credentials. With that, I think things like John touched earlier on a different subject, that things evolve. As far as the criminal part of it, that's our main objective, is to make sure that there's no crime committed, as all these individuals have indicated at this point. That doesn't mean that we can't step up. I know there's currently a group right now that consists of not one individual, but several individuals of each group that we've dealt with, that whether social services, probation, courts, law enforcement. But I think joining together and getting more of a broad spectrum so that all cases are looked at not only criminally, but also civilly, and also for the vulnerable adult part of it, is that everybody has that equal opportunity that these cases are reviewed for the fullest potential.
My current interaction with social services is pretty